live from the kitchen at St. Daniel the Prophet in Wheaton.
Hi, this is Father John Ouper at St. Daniel the Prophet Parish in Wheaton. And I'm here to celebrate and make for you today a Au Gratin butternut squash dish. Now this is a side dish for any of the holidays because we really know that all the food that we prepare and all these side dishes always are there to accent which is the main course. And the main course in our lives is our faith and our relationship with Jesus Christ. So realistically, all of our meals are just really a side dish to that great Eucharistic feast. And it is around tables with families that we tell incredible stories, we celebrate memories. And so for me, one of the new traditions that I brought to the Ouper family was this butternut squash au gratin. It's a way of taking a great vegetable and amping it up. So you can use already pre-cut butternut squash picked up at your local supermarket, or you can choose to cut your own. Be careful obviously with the knives. And I choose to always use that fresh butternut squash, taking the opportunity to first slice it and then take the skin off and cut it into small cubes. I just cut these in cubes. None of them are the same. They're not uniform, just like all of us are created differently. Every single piece in my butternut squash au gratin is definitely different and unique. And yet it all comes together to be one incredible dish. So I don't worry about whether pieces are even. I just have to make sure that I stay focused, and that focus is to make sure I don't lose any of my fingers. It's just a reminder that if you cut all the pieces uniform, which probably is a great idea, it'll probably cook in the same way. But for me, I'll probably end up overcooking it, just like the backswing of my golf game. So I'm not too much worried that all the pieces aren't the same size. I realize that they'll just all to come together when it's all cooked through. You know, we do a lot of searching for recipes to respond to the taste and the appetite that we have. The invitation for us, because there's a lot of great things on the internet, is to make sure that we also realize that God has, a recipe for us. He's got a hunger for us. He's got a incredible opportunity to share with us the importance of. The great thing about the holidays is it gives a chance for everyone to gather at a table. And it's not only the great greetings that happen, but it's also those times in which we do some great, incredible listening. Because when we listen to each other's stories, we not only learn more about them and what's going on in their lives, but it really enhances our lives, and we're able to share the goodness of God. Blessings are all around us, and so how we celebrate and share those blessings just spreads the great message of who God is and how God loves us. We're very blessed to have the gift of life, and that life is meant to be shared. You just heard the beep. The oven is ready for the squash once we get it totally prepared. The oven is set for 350 degrees, and we're going to cook this partially covered and then partially uncovered for the last half hour. But this side dish, filled with cheese, and I love a lot of cheese, just, brings together everything. It gets nice and gooey and connected, is one of these dishes that, like I said, it just first started out by me reading a recipe and then has become a tradition. There's lots of those things. We have the ability to not only celebrate traditions in which we bring the past to the present because it has meaning for us and because it has love for us, but also it gives us opportunities to create new ones, new traditions that allow us to celebrate who God is becoming in our lives. When I'm preparing a recipe and cooking, I like to try to do all my cutting first. So now that we have all the butternut squash ready to go, and it still has a couple of steps yet, I'm now going to cut the onion. The onion is going to be ground in a skillet and will become the foundation of the dish, in which then we're going to put the butternut squash over with then some cheese and breadcrumbs. So we have to think about, what is that foundation? What is the foundation in our lives? For me, I think it's that sense of love. It's being loved and sharing then that love. With these onions, because we're going to cook them in a fry pan, I'm not dicing them at all. They need to be brown, just like these concentric rings. And I think that that's also how love and support happens. That important part of our lives is that we have some inner ring. We have this core, which God is always there for us. And then we have those outer rings, our immediate relationships that God has chosen for us, our families. And then there's those relationships that we forge throughout our lives. Sometimes they come through the people we work with. Sometimes they come through friends we meet along the journey, and people that God has placed in our journey to help us and sometimes challenge us. And so we're just going to have all these concentric rings of the onion that we will then cook down, and that's going to become the foundation of the dish. Also in this dish is garlic. We're going to, add that at the end to the onions. And so how much garlic you use is really based on how much garlic taste you like. I'm a person that likes a lot of garlic, probably too much. And so I'm just cutting this up and smashing it with the side of the knife so that when I throw it into the onion, it'll have a good flavor and release that flavor. This is going to conclude the cutting aspect of everything that needs to be cut for this recipe and for this side dish. And so it's good for me to put away the knives. It's good for me to make sure that everything is ready to go so we can move to the next phase. I'm sure that not only the parish, but I'm sure the bishop is happy that I'm done using the knife. For our butternut squash, so we have the butternut squash all cubed up. We're going to add some flour to that. We're adding 2 tablespoons of flour. And with that also, we are to add about 1.5 cups of cheese. Now, most packages of cheese are 2 cups, so I'm not going to measure it out. I'm just going to estimate again. I'm a person that likes a lot of cheese. Probably not great for my cholesterol, but it's one of those great pleasures that I enjoy. And so then we have it in a bowl, and this is why I'm wearing something that's a little bit lighter, so when the flour goes flying all over, we don't have to know where exactly it goes on the black shirt and the black pants. But we just mix this all together, and this is what's going to be placed over the onion. So you just get your fingers in there and continue to make sure that the cheese and the butternut squash is covered. We want to make sure that we're covered. Just like we're covered by God's love, everything needs to be covered with that layer that we can never get away and be separated from the love of what God has. And so now the butternut squash is ready. The garlic is ready. We now have to move to making sure that we cook the onions down and make that base layer. Here we are at the stove, and we are going to get our onions cooked down. So first we're going to add a little bit of olive oil to the pan. And I usually like to cook all my vegetables at medium heat. So we've got the olive oil going in. And to bring out the flavor, and really it's the smell of the holidays, is I like to add a little bit of thyme. So I'm going to throw a little bit already into the fry pan. And then I'm going to take those onions that I just sliced. So these are all sliced onions, those concentric rings, and these are going to be the foundation of our cooking piece. And so we're just going to put these in this pan, and we're just gonna let that go. Now, if you don't think that you have enough, that's time to cut another onion to make sure that it covers the baking pan and the surface. It gives it a great layer. And then also from that foundation working upward is gonna be not only the smell and the taste of these onions, but that'll also get into that butternut squash that's gonna come together with the cheese. It's a wonderful, feel-good dish that just brings everything together. And we need that sense of comfort food. Where do we run for comfort? Where do we go? You know, in our house, we knew that we could always run, to the arms of my mom, and there was always comfort there. There was always reassurance there. Sometimes in our comfort dishes, we get that reassurance. It fills us up, it warms us up from the inside out, and it reminds us of the great treasures that can be found in our lives when we're looking for God, when we're looking for His goodness, because what we look for, we'll always find. So we're just gonna let this continue to cook at a medium heat, and it'll take some time to do that. Also, while we're doing that, we'll use some chicken stock, which we're gonna add to deglaze the pan at the very end. And so it tells us to have roughly 1 cup of that. I think that the recipe said half a cup. So we're just gonna go with that half a cup. And now that these onions are getting a little bit more translucent and getting more brown, and we wanna make sure that they're slightly brown, not totally overcooked, because they're gonna be in the oven for almost an hour, we can add then the garlic. And again, the garlic is up to taste. I like to throw more in than not, and I'm gonna let that come together in this dish as well. Put a little bit more thyme in there. Now you may want to say, oh wow, I can heat up these onions a lot faster, but I think that this controlled burn of just doing it at medium heat is actually a better way to do it. It takes care of everything evenly, and it allows you to have a little bit more control of when to pull this off the fire and out of the skillet to be our foundation. And now we're getting to the assembly, which is the fun part. So first of all, we have our pan that is ready to go into the oven. The oven again is at 350. We're going to just giving it a coating so nothing sticks to the end. Then we're going to take our onions, and we are going to put that in the bottom of this cooking pan. So we want to do that. Also now, while we're getting ready to add the other mixture, we're going to add that 1 cup of the stock. We're just going to let that cook in the fry pan just a little bit, and we're going to pour that over what we have here. So now we're going to take this butternut squash. Now, it has the flour on it. It also has the cheese mixed in. We're just going to evenly cover all those cooked onions. Get all the squash in there and some of that cheese. Cheese is going to be what holds it all together. It looks like it's got about all that it can hold. So now that we have that ready, we're going to take that chicken stock or vegetable stock, whichever you prefer, that's been heated. We're just going to pour this over. That's going to just add moisture, everything, and help it all come together. Once that is in your pan, you cover it with aluminum foil. And now this is going to cook at 350 for 30 minutes. You're going to have to see it bubbling, but we're going to let it go for 30 minutes. In the meantime, we're going to make that topping that makes it au gratin with the breadcrumbs and more cheese and butter. Now we have this great time to make the topping. So we have 3/4 cup of crumbs. You can use panko, you can use whatever kind that you like. This time I have an Italian style, and they're a little bit coarser. And again, you're supposed to have about a 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup of cheese. I don't do a whole lot of measuring when it comes to cheese, so we have that. And then you add some butter. Now I've had this butter sitting out. You know, it's amazing. It says, 1 tablespoon. You ever notice on the butter, the lines are just never on the end. So you're either getting a little bit more or a little bit less, or you're wasting some. It's just amazing that these wrappers never line up. We're going to take that 1 tablespoon. Like I said, this has been sitting out, so it'll be nice and soft. We're going to add that here to this mixture, and then we're going to mix it up again. So it's time to, again, get your fingers and hands involved with this process of combining. It's going to hold it all together. After we've cooked our squash for about 30 minutes, now we're going to add this to the very top. And this is going to give us that more sense of au gratin. It will be a great topping. So we have the onions on the bottom, and we have this great topping on top. So here we are at that 30-minute mark, and we are going to take the dish out of the oven, put the topping on top, and then place it back in the oven for another 30 minutes. So we'll see how it's been cooking. It smells good. Looks good. There we are. And so it's boiling on the sides, and that's wonderful. Now we're going to take this mixture. Now we mixed, remember, the breadcrumbs and butter, as well as more cheese. And we're going to sprinkle that over the top, because we want this to be the top crust. We're going to try to do it as evenly as we can, making sure there's no really hard clumps, so that this mixture will work out and some of the breadcrumbs can come all the way through. Be careful, you may think, oh wow, I can just pick up the pan. It is still very hot from the oven. Now, when it goes back into the oven, it's for 25 minutes, or when you have a really great crust on it, and it goes back into the oven without any aluminum foil on the top. It has been those 25 minutes, and now it's time to see the finished dish. Fantastic. It has an incredible brown coating on it. The breadcrumbs have crusted, and here we have butternut squash au gratin. From my table here to your table, but most importantly to God's holy table. May everything we do give Him praise. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being with us today. Thanks for taking the time to explore new possibilities of taste, texture, but most importantly, realizing that all side dishes, all of our lives are side dishes to the great one that we give praise to, and that's God most holy.